COVID-19 brought cycling to a crossroads. On the one hand, cycling rates surged. People who rarely biked before poured into the streets, seeking exercise and respite. COVID-19 accomplished, nearly overnight, a surge that cycling advocates scarcely could have dreamt of in the before times. On the other hand, the cycling surge has been highly uneven, and as people recoil from crowded sidewalks and transit, previous gains might be wiped out by another, bigger surge in automobility.
Hi folks, I'm Nicholas Scott and I'm thrilled to present my little film called Cycling After COVID. One of the most heartening things about this dark time has been the uptick in cycling seen across the world as people seek healthy mobility in a time of relative stasis and cities support them through open and slow streets. Will cycling ultimately see gains because of COVID? Or will a suburban surge of car driving send us backwards? And what kind of cycling will emerge? Will it soften or sharpen pre-existing social and ecological cycling injustices?
Sometime in the late morning of April 8th, 2020, something extraordinary happened to Vancouver's iconic Stanley Park. For the very first time in its colonial history, it kicked out the car. Trying to reduce the number of people in the park and increase physical distancing, while giving folks precious access to biodiverse public spaces, Vancouver's Park Board prioritized the self-propelled. The results were shocking. Stanley Park's urban wild has never been quieter, never so audible to so many visitors. Sweeping down one of its sun-spotted slopes in the late afternoon just makes you want to, well, dance. After it opened in 1888, as a colonial construct foisted upon the traditional territories of the Coast Salish First Nations, Stanley Park quickly became inundated by the car and its pollution. Temporarily released from the jaws of motor vehicles, including the float planes roaring over its tree canopy and passenger jets thundering through the skies above, Stanley Park suddenly sounds and smells like the healthy, unadulterated and fictitious wilderness most settlers and visitors of Vancouver imagine it to be. In the beginning, COVID transformed space, time, and mobility. Tied to a place, many folks felt a crushing slowness, followed by the uneasy sense of not being able to keep pace with delayed life events, reorganized work, and the accelerated barrage of breaking news. After the full gravity of the pandemic finally dawned on me, I re-emerged to find an unfamiliar city, a city so quiet its non-human residents could speak. The streets were wiped clean and full of possibility, which was terrifying. My bicycle, my lifeline, becomes my anti-anxiety medication, and it's a physical distancing machine. Pushing against the stress of a deadly pandemic is the soothing calm and undeniable joy of being able to bike on a street without the car. Cycling's value as a tool for distancing and mental health grows exponentially where cities create more room for cycling. Stanley Park's car-free experiment didn't last. The park reopened to car traffic in June after some significant bike lash. But it was ecstasy while it lasted. offering a safe space for play, adventure, and noticing non-humans. And it marked the beginning of a wider movement, one that spilled out of the public park and into the streets. Under the banner of open or slow streets, cities across the world, from Bogota to Milan, Paris to Oakland, found a way to afford more active mobility under COVID. In Vancouver, the first slow street on Sunset Avenue chopped the car's real estate in half. Through something as simple and cheap as a line of pylons, what had been a hair-raising ride to Stanley Park on a 4-lane arterial highway turned into dedicated space for cycling, which thousands of people have taken advantage of every day, showing the extreme latent demand for safer cycling streets. Canada's slow streets are not without their problems, not least their complete absence in most of the city where people cycling face off with fast, entitled drivers. In Vancouver, slow streets represent a minuscule proportion, about 2%, of the overall road network. Vancouver has done a decent job of targeting the slow streets it does have to areas with park access deficits. However, some neighborhoods, such as the city's beleaguered downtown east side, demand greater attention, especially as the opioid crisis eclipses COVID. The city's most vulnerable citizens, doubly displaced by condo-driven gentrification and injunctions against dwelling in local parks such as Oppenheimer, are sometimes perceived as a liability rather than stakeholder for slow streets. Beyond slow streets, it seems that COVID may be sharpening pre-existing cycling inequities, with a cycling surge occurring in areas already equipped with the best cycling infrastructure. Case in point, Point Grey Road, an ultra-wealthy district that, ironically, initially fought off bikeway construction for clashing with its luxury landscape. Compounding socioeconomic cycling inequities are racial divides and urban histories of environmental racism. The Dunsmuir Street Viaduct, which includes this popular cycling route into downtown Vancouver, was the beginning of what was meant to become a superhighway in the late 60s and early 70s. Only viaducts were built, which entailed demolishing the city's sole black neighborhood. The viaduct's imminent deconstruction has strengthened calls for cultural reparations. Environmental racism associated with automobility complicates cycling expansion after COVID right across Canada. Vancouver's viaducts are an echo of Halifax's Cogswell Interchange, which cuts off the urban core from the city's diverse North End. Halifax has deep racial trauma. A bridge built in the North End during highway mania demolished the city's long subjugated Africville community. Halifax's slow streets, like Vancouver's, only cover a tiny area in a city with less cycling. Nevertheless, they connect and slow down traffic for some of the city's marginalized populations, including the residents of the Northwood Long-Term Care Home, where 63 of Nova Scotia's 64 deaths from COVID transpired. Besides threatening to deepen rather than ameliorate cycling inequities, COVID poses another existential problem for cycling. People may pull back from using crowded sidewalks and public transit helping to fuel the growth of car-oriented suburbs, like this one in my hometown, Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. These carburbs are already growing far faster in Canada than the cycling city, creating systemically horrible cycling conditions, particularly for people who aren't middle-aged white men. This kind of city not only builds out modernist infrastructure rooted in racist exclusion, it also excludes most of the population from cycling, particularly women, children, and older folks who prefer safer, dedicated bike lanes protected from fast, violent cars. It's a socially unjust city, one that we need to rapidly unbuild, not inflate. If COVID forced cycling to a crossroads regarding its social inequities, it also raised the stakes of cycling's contested relationship with the environment. Urban resilience requires social but also ecological justice. Not all cycling is good for the environment, especially where it entangles with fossil-fueled mobilities and environmentally destructive lifestyles. Nevertheless, cycling has unbelievable potential to advance ecological justice by ameliorating climate change and reversing habitat degradation. But ecological justice isn't only about climate change and habitat degradation. It's also about recognizing other than human persons as individuals worthy of our moral concern and who require, among other things, some say in how and where and with whom they move and dwell. The humans they trust can help elicit and articulate their needs and desires. Interspecies mobility justice is an idea whose time has come, and cycling can help. You gotta be careful in this park, where wealthy neighbors like to walk and don't like cyclists too much. The police might get you for not wearing a helmet.